some of that. Okay, I'm going to go live. There's 5 people watching, apparently.
Whoa.
All right. Hello, everybody. Welcome to a little impromptu Keeping Carlson recording. Figured message my pal Brian. Be like, what are you up to tonight? Want to talk some hockey? Want to talk some Keeping Carlson? Here we are. 9 o'clock. How you doing?
I was listening to your Brian Hedger interview. And like a couple times at the start, it was like, like I heard you say Brian, and it was like a little jarring. I'm like, because I'm listening and I'm like, but like I'm used to listening to live and like having to respond. So I'm like, what? And then like I sort of got over it. But at the end, he was like, Brian, it's been great talking to you. And I just I felt like it was a personal message. It was very funny that the first Beat Writers episode you did was just with another Brian.
Yeah, it was. Were you a little worried, like, the movie AI, where like the kid thinks that he's unique, like the robot, and then it turns out that there's like a bunch of him, and then it's like, I'm special, I'm unique, I'm one of a kind, and the guy was like, well, you're first of a kind. That's something, isn't it? It's like, I don't think it was something for him, but you're the first Brian I ever podcasted with.
Wow, that's really meaningful. Do you know one thing?
This isn't the live show. This is live.
Yeah.
Hey, Maddie, and hey. Yeah, I'm just letting people know this isn't the actual show. Yeah, please go ahead. Yeah.
One thing Columbus Brian said, I guess I could use his full name, Brian Hedger.
Yeah.
Who I loved how he also like didn't know his own Instagram. He's like, I think it's Brian.
That's common. I hear podcasts all the time when like Rob C is like interviewing people and is like, so what are your things? Like, I'm on Insta. I'm not exactly sure. Probably that's probably the same as my Twitter.
Do you believe these people, or are they just trying to seem like, is this just like the cool thing to do?
Yeah, I don't know. It's a good question. I mean, well, I believe you. Or no, I believe Brian Hedger.
Confusing Brian's.
I don't even know who's on Instagram. I don't use Instagram. Actually, I just went to a plant shop with Dina. We got a new house, right? So now we need to buy plants, of course, apparently.
Oh yeah.
So we went to this plant store, and like I was kind of like, how about this one? But like then they were saying that we should go on their Instagram, and like they have like descriptions of all the plants. And then they were like saying we could like message them with an image of like the spot in the house where the plant will be, so then they could recommend like a proper plant.
Wow,
so I had to like download Instagram and like get in on this whole combo.
Yeah, I don't like restaurants when they like put out their like menus or like whatever weekly takeout options, or like I don't use it. I don't want to, and I can't be bothered. Like I just like they don't care. Like I'm in the minority, but like I just won't know.
So sorry, what was the thing you wanted to say?
What was I going to say?
You were saying about Instagram. Brian didn't know his Instagram. Is that it?
No, he was talking about Boone Jenner being like leading the team in scoring opportunities. And I was trying to find that and I can't. Like I'm trying to find and he mentioned it was on Natural Stat Trick.
Just tweet. It's also good. I think. I
know, but I would be tweeting the beat writers from the Keeping Carlson Twitter.
No, tweet from your personal.
I don't have a personal.
So make a burner. Like just make a Twitter account.
One following 2, Brian Hedger and
Keeping you used Carlson to have a Twitter account. Did you delete it or did you just like make it inactive?
I locked it. It's gone.
What does that mean? You locked it? You can't unlock it?
I don't want to unlock it.
Just for one tweet and then lock again. Do it for the business.
Your houseplant story also reminded me. I watched the Curb episode recently where Jeff and his wife like are moving back in together.
Okay.
They're in the new house, and like Larry comes over, like they moved to the neighborhood, and like she offers him a tour. I forget.
Oh yeah, he's like, I don't need it. I don't need the tour.
Yeah, I'm good. And
I get it.
And then you fat. You're like you
asshole.
Sick F. Yeah, like get out.
Like, I know. Oh, this is the bedroom. This is the bathroom. I know. I know.
It was so good, and it's true. Like as somebody who's in a new home, like I offer people the tour, but like in my heart, I don't believe anybody wants the tour because I don't want the tour either. And he takes a tour at Crazy Eyes.
Yeah. Oh, that's one of my favorite episodes, Crazy Eyes.
Yeah.
With some I guess not safe for podcasting topics. Then Larry has the hair in his throat.
Yeah, that was really like I forgot about that whole. I forgot about that. By the way, like I really, the only thing that caught on that stuck with me was the house tour, declining the house tour.
Don't you think that we should just cancel Keeping Karlsson and do a Curb Your Enthusiasm rewatch podcast instead? That'd be so fun.
I would do that.
I'm doing a Survivor podcast with Ben, so might as well do a Curb podcast with you. But okay, let's actually start the show, because this is all just like for the pre-show. This is like,
let's get started. Did I even say the thing? Oh yeah, I did say the thing.
I don't remember, something about Instagram.
And nothing to do with Instagram. So
you don't know like Boone Jenner's whatever participation of points?
No, it was scoring. Brian said that he was like leading the team in scoring opportunities. The last few years. And like, I see he's up there along with Brendan Gaunce.
Well, maybe like leading is sort of like among the leaders, you know, like leading is one of those words that maybe you can use some liberties with.
Yeah,
but okay, we'll save it for the show. But I guess we don't need that could be good that was good for the pre-show.
I've also been I've been toying with the idea, and we should just start. But hey,
I'm free. Like, you're the one who told me right before we started. I'd love for this not to go long. So it's like,
okay. But now I'm chatting.
Great, I love to chat. We've got Matt, we've got John, we've got another Matt, Fantasy Tidbits Matt. So we've got a cool crew.
Matt is the new Ryan. I'm pretty sure Matt is the new Ryan.
Okay, we've lost a couple core Ryans over the years.
Yeah, but like. Core in like the wrong way for
no, you're thinking of the one Ryan who you didn't like, but like there's like Ryan McLaughlin. I love that Ryan. He was a huge part of the community.
He's awesome,
but he's I think more into baseball now. Like he's still around, but I don't think he's like doing hockey anymore.
I saw a family out at Dow's Lake today. In Ottawa, like Mother's Day tulip festival, like hot destination for Mother's Day. You walk, you see the tulips, whatever. They were all wearing matching New York Mets gear.
Okay. Maybe they're tourists.
I mean, so that was one theory, but also, like, Elon, if you were a tourist with your family of 4, would you like wear like matching authentic like MLB Blue Jays gear? Like no one cares about the New York Mets here. No one. What are you trying to say?
Oh, they're big fans. Like, I guess they're just trying to support the team.
I mean, that's it was just like there were a lot of
baseball season has started, I
today
believe.
For Mother's Day.
Let's see how the New York Mets are doing.
Happy Mother's Day to the mothers out there.
I think that I totally missed that baseball started, and then I got a message from I won't even say a gambling site that I know John in the chat is not a fan of. Well, he's not a fan of like a lot of them, but he just like specifically referenced how he hopes that the couple doesn't get sponsored by this one. And then it was like, make a free bet about baseball. So I was like, sure. So I was looking at all the different games, and then I bet the Colorado Rockies were like plus 1.5, and then the over or minus 1.5, but then the over under was like 50, like the over under was so high that it's like obviously the game's not going to be a 1-point game, or not obviously, but you know, better chance it's not going to be a 1-point game if they're predicting that there's. I feel like I gamed it pretty well, and then they ended up winning by 2 points, so I won the bet. But anyways, why did I bring that up? Oh, we're looking at the New York Mets, Brian, first in the National League East.
Maybe that's why.
First in the whole MLB. Actually, they have 20 wins. No other team has 20 wins. New York Mets are the team. Brian, you just got to get your Mets gear. This is the future championship team, it looks like.
You know what? Whatever the reason was for doing it, it worked. Because here we are talking about the New York Mets on Keeping Karlsson.
Do you get so in the NHL? By the way, I just learned something recently, and it's like I guess I knew it, but I never actually put it in my brain. You know, there's those things that, like, once you hear it, you're like, oh yeah, obviously. But like, so the Eastern Conference are all the NHL teams in the Eastern Time Zone, and then the Western Conference are all the NHL teams that are not in the Eastern Time Zone. Did you know that?
Okay.
I just realized that like a couple days ago.
I think I knew that like implicitly.
Like I feel like that didn't used to be the rule, right? Like the Leafs were in the West.
Used to be out West.
Detroit, and now that I feel like it's a straight line. I couldn't think of one team that doesn't follow that rule. Anyways, I brought that up just because I'm like, what is the difference between the American League and the National League in baseball? Because there's a New York Mets in National and New York Yankees in American. So definitely it's not geographical. Like, how do they decide who goes where?
Good question. I don't know. There used to be a designated hitter rule in the AL, but not the NL. But I'm pretty sure I saw just the other day that now there's designated hitter number, like pitcher's bat in the National League, or they used to.
Yeah, now they don't.
Yeah, and I had a crossword clue about like an AFC East football or an AFC football team, and I also have no idea what the difference is between the AFC and the NFC in NFL.
Okay, I have a question. This is a trivia question, but then we're going to actually start the podcast. There's a trivia question for the baseball fans out there that are watching live. I'm looking at all the MLB team logos right now because I'm looking at the standings. There's 3 teams that have a red C or close, like it sort of looks like a C.
Can I name them?
Yeah, sure.
Cleveland.
Nope.
Oh,
you lost Cincinnati. Right off the bat. Cleveland is a baseball with like wings on it.
They're the Guardians now.
Oh yeah, it looks like there's a G on the ball. Okay, so yeah, Cleveland was wrong. What was your next guess? Cincinnati. That's correct. That looks like a C. Red C. There's 2 more that have red C's.
Minnesota.
Yeah. Why does Minnesota have a red C?
Well, isn't it a TC, like Twin Cities?
Okay, and then there's one more.
Is it Colorado?
No, that's a blue C and an R intersecting with it.
The Cubs.
Yeah, Cubs.
Yeah.
I mean, come on. It's like they need to come up with different logos, I think. With
Cleveland is a red C on MLB.com.
It is? Oh, yeah. Not on ESPN MLB standings. Should we start the show? We have like some things actually. Should we just not do a show? Should we just chat and like not release the show? Like this is an unscheduled bonus episode, I think. So up to you. I have some things to say.
Let's say them.
Let's say them. All right.
Let's go.
Yes! Welcome, everybody, to a bonus episode of Keeping Karlsson. Brian, I've decided this is not going to go and be... I don't know how we even decide it. I'm just jumping right in here. I haven't even introduced myself or you. But normally, Keeping Karlsson, the last Beat Writer episode we dropped with Murat was number 407. But I've decided this is just bonus : Kakupful, KKPP, and takeaways. That's welcome to this episode. I'm your host, Elon Dubrovsky. Just got the bug, right? Need to do some podcasting, and with me, as always, except not for the last 2 episodes, which is maybe also why I needed to get on here to chat with my very good friend who I miss so much, Brian Com. Happy early birthday!
Thanks, Elon. Hi, everyone, and hello. That really throws me off. I actually prefer it not to be acknowledged, but thank you. Sort of insincerely, but thank you all for tuning in to another episode. It's great to see you. Elon, I love that your first episode of 32 Beats. First off, I love that the series is up and running already, even though the first round, we're like not even at the tail end of the first round. We're just like getting into the thick of it. But
these episodes are going to have like no downloads. Everyone's like, why do I care about the Columbus Blue Jackets? It was a good episode. Hopefully people will think to go back and listen to it later. But I understand why our download numbers may be down. But hey, we got 32 teams to go, so we don't have time to wait. Yeah,
and like Elon, you're also trying to ease everyone into the series because usually you podcast with Brian, and you brought a Brian Hedger, to talk about Columbus. It was fantastic. And I love in the 2 interviews you've already started booking them for next year at the end of the interview. So that's great. There's 2 down, 30 to go, and a great series so far. If you haven't been listening, I would assume you are if you're listening to this, but we're going to share our takeaways on this episode, as well as a couple early thoughts on the NHL playoffs so far, and a big cupful announcement about the Keeping Karlsson Ultimate Patron Fantasy League.
I mean, I feel like you teased that in our Discord. So we're going to have a big couple announcement. And I feel like you kind of oversold it. Like, it's not as big. Like, I would have thought that people were trying to predict if like we're changing some rule or we're doing. So why don't we just like get it out there to start? The big couple announcement. Drum roll, please. By the way, the couple is the Keeping Karlsson Ultimate Patron Fantasy League, a league that we've ran for 7 years now. And it's basically a tiered league. Probably anyone listening to this episode probably knows, because otherwise it's a kind of an odd first episode of Keeping Karlsson to listen to. But anyways, you start at the bottom tier when you sign up for your first year, and you slowly climb up the ranks. If you win or do well, you'll climb a little bit faster. But even people who don't win end up climbing up to tiers 4, 5, whatever over the years. Anyways, due to attrition. Anyways, you climb your way up, and eventually you get to a point where you could potentially be up in tier 1, competing for the Cupful Ultimate Champion. It's a year we've been doing every year. It's a league we've been doing every year. It's a lot of fun. And normally we open up registration in September, and this year we've decided to do things a little bit differently. So, Brian, why don't you make the big announcement that I've sort of already spoiled?
Yeah, we're opening up registration now. It's open to
What?
all patrons of Keeping Karlsson. The announcement is on our Discord, and you can click in there to go get on like our registration form, which looks very similar to last year's, and get your name down now.
Early bird special.
Early birds. There's really nothing actually special about it, except you don't have to worry about it later. And if you know you're in, you're guaranteeing your spot and continuing your quest for Cupful glory. So we definitely would love for you, if you're not a patron now, whether this is a reason or not, come join us. But if you are a patron, make sure to check the announcement. Everyone will have been tagged in it. So you can just go ahead and pre-register, because why wait till August? Let's get the ball rolling now.
Yeah, and obviously a couple things. Like, first of all, one nice thing about doing this early registration is then we'll be able to sort of like if you think you're going to be, and if you're not sure, you can always register. We're going to be sending some messages out throughout the summer. Like, are you sure you're in? Like, the goal is we want, like, by the time that it's actually time to start setting up the leagues, I want to make sure that everyone is like active and responding to our messages and like ready to go and not going to like totally ghost us. So now we can get people in early. We can like send some messages out and confirm people are still in, that they're getting the messages, they're getting the notifications, whatever they need to do. One thing to note is that right now we have our summer promotion going, so you could be a patron for just $1 for any amount, and get all of the perks that we give. Once the actual season gets going, we'll go back to our regular perks, which is like $5 US to be a patron. So that's what you'll need to do to be a patron. But you could come now, pre-register for the Cupful. Then, everyone who registers also, we might start sending out some emails with some announcements. I don't know exactly what we're going to do, but we're getting the ball rolling, right? We might have some rule changes coming up. It's going to be a big, exciting summer to make sure to make any tweaks we need to do to make our league, the best possible league. And we sent back, by the way, we sent out all of these feedback forms, right? Like, we made a survey and a bunch of people filled those out. Brian, we're definitely going to talk about that on our next patron cast and go over some of our lessons learned from the feedback we've gotten from people. So, yeah, big stuff for the Cupful. Come register now so we can get a sense of if you're in or not. And also, if you played last year, then we could start planning out like what division you're going to be in. Like, it'll be nice to know like promotion and relegation. We won't know officially until, the deadline passes. We know exactly who's signed up, but might as well get going. So that's that. That's the first announcement. Brian, anything else you want to say about the Cupful before we go and talk about our playoff pool?
No, you should join. If you're thinking about it and you never have before, now is a great time to get in. It's our 8th season that we're going into, and we have an out-of-date website that will at some point be updated. But if you just want to get a sense of what the whole league is about, you can head to kkupfl.com, where at some point we'll also have a link to pre-registration or an email like sign-up thing where we'll let you know when we've really blown the doors open for registration to happen. But get in now so you don't forget later. And we're really excited to just get the ball rolling. Like, Elon, you mentioned how it's going to help us be better commissioners. And why is that good for anybody who wants to register? That's good because we're super active and we care a lot about the league and we want everyone engaged. We aim to have 100% active managers through the league. Last year we had over 450 managers. And our goal was every single one of them is managing their teams. There's no inactives. Nobody's bailing or screwing up their lineups on a regular basis, changing the whole competitive advantage. So this helps us do that, which is good for everybody in the league. So we hope you'll join us and help us. We want to have over 500 managers this year. So this is one step on the way to doing that. Yeah. And Elon, I'm done.
Okay, yeah, Matt here in the chat is saying he was hoping it would be a Fantrax announcement. Oh, so it's still on the table. So we got all your feedback. We also did a whole side, this Cupful has been on Yahoo for the last few years. We did a whole side test league on Fantrax just to get some feedback on that. So we're going to get into that. Okay, that's actually the patron cast next week for patrons. We're going to talk about that. We're going to be having a big Cupful.
It's going to be tons of Cupful content. We're going to do our rule change bracket. We're going to look at the exit survey feedback. We're going to talk about the changes. That's all to come. But for now, there's a couple more pressing items.
Yeah. By the way, one thing I'll just throw out there, because I know it's everyone's saying that we need to fix goalies. This is my opinion, but I'm going to I haven't read all the exit surveys yet, but I think goalies were actually fine. And I have arguments to suggest that people think they were overpowered, but I don't think that was the case. But anyways, one of the fun conversations we'll be having over the summer, and obviously you could tell, we're thinking about it all the time. We have a group chat with Kevin, who's a Cupful coordinator, and then Brian and myself, and we're just discussing all the time, potential rule changes we can or should make. And, but it's Well, actually, oh man, I was about to say it's like the Supreme Court and that like, we're reticent to make like big changes. But of course, I guess, the news recently is. Anyway, I don't want to get into that, but I'll just say that, obviously we don't want to make any huge changes, but we do like to make little tweaks year in, year out, keep things fresh. But okay, Brian, so let's talk about the playoffs now, okay? We're 4 games in for some series, 3 games in for another. The Leafs just scored a goal finally in this game against Tampa. Obviously, this is going to be going to 2 games to 2. Guess who scored the goal? His first point of the playoffs, William Nylander, who is someone who I drafted pretty high in our Keeping Karlsson playoff pool, and he was a huge disappointment for me. But hey, I'll take the point today, and maybe he can even get me another garbage time goal here. I wouldn't mind, or Kucherov could do something for me. How are you doing, by the way, Brian, in the Keeping Karlsson playoff pool? Like, I'm right now, like, right on the cusp. Like, I'm sort of in the race. I don't love my chances. I might, like, sneak into 5th place if I get really lucky, but definitely hasn't gone the way I expected. It'll be fun to talk through some of the top scores in the playoffs so far that I should have taken and didn't. I'm curious to know how things are going on your side.
I'm doing okay. There's a gap between the top 4 and the field in my division, and I am in the top 4 at the moment. So I'm feeling pretty good about my chances. But yeah, I'm not going to not going to count any of my chicks before they hatch here. Like David Perron was obviously like my night 1 MVP. That was a crazy hat trick. And when I picked David Perron in the pool, I had all the Blues at my disposal and was trying desperately. And I feel like this is going to be a problem in September to tell one apart from the other. It's like, okay, do I go Perron? Do I go Kyrou? Do I go Schenn? Like there's Robert Thomas. Like there's so many equivalent options. And I don't think it was smart of me to actually, like, I don't think I deserved that extra boost because I picked David Perron over the other guys. I think I just got really lucky.
Yeah, he also had 3 points today. So big first game, big game today with the Blues. They had a couple This is the thing with these playoff pools, right? Like you're just kind of getting lucky. Like it was 3-2. Then with like 2 minutes left, Perron scored a goal into the empty net. Then Ryan O'Reilly scored a power play goal with Perron assisting. So like just 2 points right at the end of the game. Ryan O'Reilly, by the way, is someone who had this like totally boring season, like one of his worst regular seasons in a long time. He averaged like paced for only 61 points if he would have played all 82 games. We played 78 games, so 58 points in 78 games, a lot lower than his like almost 80 points the year before. But so far in the playoffs, looking a lot better, right? Like he's had 2 points in that first game, 3 points today. Overall, he's sitting at 6 points in the 4 games, and it looks like this series now is 2 games to 2, so it's going to be a long series. So yeah, I guess, Ryan O'Reilly was amazing in that cup run. Also, the other big news in St. Louis, man, Brian, I could just talk to you all night, so you'll have to stop me. But like, how about Jordan Binnington getting the game today, getting the win? I'd imagine he'll play the next game now after Husso lost a couple. I guess like obviously he has history being in the playoffs with St. Louis, so I think it's just an interesting turn of events, and I feel a little bit bad for Ville Husso, who's a UFA, and I could see the dollars like decreasing. It's like the stock market recently. Like every day that Binnington plays, that's going to be Husso just like potentially losing money that he would have gotten. It's like, well, should we really spend so much money on a guy who couldn't even hold the job in the playoffs? I don't know how GMs think, but I'd imagine someone would think like this.
Oh, I think many think like that. That's how we see so many of the mistakes that we get to talk about on the show. But Husso went from hero to GOAT really quickly, like totally stood on his head to steal game 1 with 37 save shutout against Minnesota, and then was not standing on his head at all. Let in 5 on 27 and then 4 on 38 for 32 shots in the next 2 games. So St. Louis goes back to Binnington, which we know Craig Berube like secretly really wants to go back to Binnington. Like he's just looking for excuses to go back to Binnington all the time. So Husso gave him one. Honestly, Binnington's done well, so I can't second guess the decision. But I don't know. Like I don't feel like there was enough there to turn away from Husso. Like a lot of other goalies would have gotten more leash than that. Yeah. And I guess Binnington does have, his career playoff record is pretty decent. He won the Stanley Cup, coming out of nowhere the year he took the starter's job. Basically only because of injuries that gave him the opportunity. So I can see why St. Louis wants to do this. Maybe Berube feels like his job is on the line, and Binnington has been his live and die kind of guy until Binnington really just could not give Berube an excuse to continue trying him. So we'll see what keeps happening. I would love, Elon, I just want some clarity between these two guys in the offseason. Like whatever happens in this series, I want to know what I can at least expect come training camp. Like I don't want it to be again tossed like completely in the air.
But Husso's a UFA, right? He might not even be with the team at this point. But yeah, obviously if he gets signed, then I'd imagine it's going to be like a 50-50. But so what are you more surprised about? That Binnington got in the net for St. Louis? Or that, actually this is pretty obvious, I guess, or that Swayman has taken over the job in Boston? I know it's like you're more surprised about Binnington, right? Because you expected that Swayman was better, I believe, going into the series. But Ullmark, led in 4 goals in each of the first 2 games in the series against Carolina. Canes went up 2-0. Now Swayman's played the last 2 games. Now it's 2-2. So I think even more so than Binnington, Swayman has like probably cemented it. Like this is gonna be a tough series the rest of the way, but I'd imagine that the Bruins have their future goalie now playing. Like I don't see a reason to switch back to Ullmark. Obviously anything could happen, but Jeremy Swayman now, let's see if he can help them pull off this upset, coming back from being down 2-0, taking out the Canes.
Yeah, both guys are going to be around for at least a little while, assuming Boston can't or doesn't unload Ullmark. So like it's not totally, and their window is going to be shut by the time Ullmark's contract is over, right? Because Marchand will have moved on, Bergeron will have moved on. They'll still have Pasternak and Hall and McAvoy. Like they'll still have some pieces, but I don't think they'll be able to really push themselves to being like a top flight contender, especially against a team like Carolina. But what a great way to try and get your goalie of the future some experience here and meaningful experience. They're not just tossing him in the series they're going to lose. Hey, if Swayman can pull them through this, then maybe he is the guy that they can count on over the next couple of years. And again, I've been skeptical on the show for a couple of years now, like sounding the alarm that Boston's window to contend is not going to be open a whole lot longer, but they sure are giving Carolina a nice little run here on the back of Swayman. And yeah, I'm not surprised to see Swayman take the job. Remember my question when we had our episode about all the one question for every beat writer for 32 beats this season? Mine was, you called it boring, but mine was like, why is Ullmark starting game 1? What's the purpose there? What's the long-term plan between these two goalies? And then like the next day I saw Fluto Shinzawa, who's been on the Beats series before, tweeting like it's Ullmark. Obviously the starter is Ullmark. It was never in question for game 1. And now here we are. So Binnington, I'm like truly surprised by. Swayman, I'm not.
Right. Yeah. I'm not surprised that you're saying that. And yeah, I guess Ullmark was the starter to start the season. He's the one with the bigger contract they signed in the offseason, or I guess they traded for, anyway, you know what I mean? Like, oh no, he was a UFA signing. So, but yeah, I think at this point, forget about goalie of the future. I think Swayman is the goalie of the present. And I think Ullmark will be a really good, if not slightly overpaid backup next year. Or, it's Boston, right? So they, with Halak and Rask over the years, it's not exactly starter backup. It's like 1A, 1B. But yeah, Swayman clearly has got to be their starter if they want to have a chance at this playoffs, I think. By the way, speaking of Boston, looking at the current standings in terms of total points you could have gotten in your Kevin Karlsson playoff pool draft, Brad Marchand leading the way after his big game today. He had 5 points today after getting 4 points in the first 3 games. That brings him up to 9 points in 4 games. He was obviously someone that was taken pretty high, but, not the highest. And so far, he is paying off for anyone who got him. And then, believe it or not, number 2 so far is Cale Makar, a defenseman who is just like already, to me, it's like he's already having a legendary career. It seems like he's a point per game defenseman at the age of, what is he now, like 22? He's 23 years old. And I feel dumb for taking, I took Kucherov 2nd overall in my draft, which, Kucherov hasn't been bad. He has a couple points today. But, with the value over replacement for a defenseman, like Makar is challenging to potentially be the total points leader, and he's taking up a D spot. So I feel like I should have just taken Makar. The thing is also, I was worried about Colorado sweeping the series, which I think they will. But like you brought up in that last podcast, it's like even in only 4 games, the Avs can score a lot of goals. There was that one game where they just couldn't get anything past Connor Ingram. But aside from that, they've got 14 goals in the other 2 games. We'll see if they can close it out tomorrow in Nashville.
Oh, sorry.
Today's... I don't know. The thing is, it's so funny because Brian and I chat all the time, like not doing podcasts, and that never happens. It's not like we're just chatting and then you're just like at a loss for words. But I guess it's like the pressure of having Adam and Matt here in the chat.
Okay, here we go. Cale Makar making himself a legit like I was actually thinking of whether he could be eventually a first overall fantasy pick. And I know that's going far, but if we knew that Cale Makar was going to be a point per game player as a defenseman, this was the thought I was having. Would that be enough for him to be the first overall pick in a fantasy draft? The answer is no. Like, he would have to be better than a point per game, but how good or how close is he to being there? In our playoff polls, he was picked as early as 4th overall. And on average, he was picked, somewhere between 10th and 11th. But certainly, like you said, Elon, you took Kucherov. Did you say second?
Yeah, second overall.
Yeah.
McDavid went first. Who, by the way, Edmonton's only played 3 games so far. Actually, we're recording this it's like 9:30 p.m. on Sunday, which is important to mention because Edmonton and LA haven't played their game today, right? So Makar has 7 points in 3 games. Oh, that's also in 3 games. But we'll see how the Oilers do today. But McDavid has 6 points in 3. He has 2 points every game. So if he keeps that up, he'll be catching up.
And 9:30 p.m. Eastern, right? If this was 9:30 p.m. Yeah. Okay.
The Eastern time, just like all the teams in the Eastern Conference. This was the thing I was talking about in the pre-show. Am I the only dummy that didn't realize this until just now? The Eastern Conference has all the teams who play in the Eastern time zone. I never put that together, but there you go. That's why they call it the Eastern Conference, I guess. Well, and they're East.
So what would it take for you to consider Cale Makar a first overall fan? Like, is it possible? Because, I mean, we're talking McDavid, we're talking Matthews. That seems a bridge too far. But could he eventually at least be lumped in with that top 4 or 5 group that has, you've got McDavid, Matthews, McKinnon, Draisaitl, Kucherov. Is Makar up there in a September regular season fantasy hockey draft?
I mean, so there was a time, I'll answer your question. Like, obviously it's complicated, right? Like, there was a time when we were looking at like a Brent Burns as one of the top players to draft because he was just like getting, so many peripherals to go along with his point per game, like he was like shooting as much as a forward. And because of the value over replacement for a defenseman and like his huge contributions, he was like kind of worth it. Like, I think we were at some point suggesting that maybe if you took Brent Burns number 1, it wouldn't be like the worst decision you could make. That was kind of like before Connor McDavid broke out in the way he has, and now like Austin Matthews. Like, I just feel like if you're talking about in that group, I could see it, but it's just like Makar's probably, what does he top out at? Like 100 points probably, right? Which would be insane and amazing. Like, that's even like above what he did. But even if he gets 100 points, is that worth it if McDavid gets 130? Because also, I don't know if the value over replacement is as high as it used to be. Like, Roman Josi just had an insane season. Like, Hedman. Like, I feel like...
Well, we also had like the number of 100-point scorers double this season compared to last year. So like for forwards, it's also the value. I thought that's where you were actually going with it, saying maybe McDavid's value over replacement isn't as high as it once was.
Well, here, let me put it to you this way. Okay, let's look at this past season in the cupful, looking at the average fantasy points per game, and we're like 4.5 for a goal, 3 for an assist, and then you get like 0.5 for a shot, and then some other stuff, hits and blocks and whatever. I guess for defensemen, sometimes blocks are more interesting and worthwhile if you get it. And Makar's not like nothing for blocks, right? He's had some like 1 and 2 block games. Like, he usually gets at least 1 or 2, and then every once in a while he'll get like 4. But he's not like one of the top blockers. But anyways, Makar averaged 6.45 points per game, which is like really high. This is like top 15, I think, top 10, top 15. But you look at Matthews was 8.62. So I don't know if the value over replacement is there. Like I think even like the way Matthews and then McDavid was second was 7.82, and then McKinnon 7.65. So it is kind of a jump. But I think it's a really good question. I think it's a good point. But by the way, Roman Josi was 6.83. He was actually higher than Cale Makar this year. So it is kind of unfair that we talk so much about Makar, not as much about Roman Josi, who had just as good of a season. But obviously now Makar is going to be the talk over the next couple of months because he's going to be just dominating these playoffs while Josi's going to be gone in the game.
Just for the record, I think we did a pretty good job.
No, we do, yeah.
Like of talking about Roman Josi. No, it
but really you never asked me like, is Roman Josi worth being going to be drafted in the top 5?
Well, right, because I don't think we're expecting his upside to be much further beyond. Cale Makar seems like someone who's still building. Like, he's still young. There could be more. Roman Josi, it's like he's amazing, and we've loved him for a while. Of course, we didn't see this season coming from him, but we did call it out through the year when we saw it, which I don't think a lot of people did until the playoffs came and they're like, okay, what can we say about Nashville in this Nashville Colorado storyline? I need to say something about a Predator. But I feel like we're not going to see any brand new tricks from Roman Josi where we could from Makar.
Yeah, for sure. No, I'd imagine Yosi's hit his ceiling at this point, which is a very nice, all-star ceiling for sure. Another goal for William Nylander. How about that? Thank you very much. 6-3 though for the Lightning. So too bad for Leafs fans. Still a good shot to win this series. I guess another couple noteworthy names I'll just throw at you. Then we can go to the final portion of this bonus episode. Evander Kane having an amazing playoffs. I'm curious to know if he's someone, we've talked about like how good he was in Edmonton. He now had a hat trick in the last game. And again, we're recording this right before an Oilers game is going to start. So who knows if he's going to have another big game or not. But he had a hat trick in the last game, the 8-2 win. He also had 2 goals and assists in the 6-0 win. We've talked about some new players who have joined that like first round or two in fantasy. I just wonder, like, Evander Kane is a free agent at the end of this year, though. It's just like, we'll see if Edmonton wins the series, and things go well. Just seems like a good fit. I'm sure he likes playing with Connor McDavid. I'd imagine he's not having any complaints. So if they could make the money work, I guess the Oilers are kind of strapped. So maybe I'm getting ahead of myself. But let's just say if Evander Kane stayed on the Oilers, I wonder if he's in that same conversation as like a Kyle Connor, like Gensel. Like, I feel like we don't, at least in my head, correct me if I'm wrong, for you, like for me, I don't think of Evander Kane like in that upper echelon, but I'm starting to wonder if I should, because he's just been so good, and especially like in terms of fantasy, with all the shots on goal, which I love. He had 9 shots in that last game. He has 5, 3, and 9 shots in the first 3 games. So Evander Kane really like coming out over these past couple of months, and now these playoffs, as being like a real fantasy superstar. And he was in San Jose, but like even more so.
Well, that's what I was going to say. He was huge in San Jose. And after a couple of years where he wasn't, where he seemed to be settling around like 60 points, he had a massive season last year in 2021 with San Jose. And a lot of it looked sustainable and for real. And actually, one incredible thing is that he paced for 72 points. It was over 56 games. This was the season that was it shortened due to, I've like lost track of which seasons were shortened due to COVID.
The last 2 before this one.
Yeah. And this one wasn't shortened. This was just like heavily affected at times. Okay. So in one of the COVID shortened seasons, the most recent one, Kane was on 72-point pace, even though he was pacing for like fewer than 15 power play points, which is crazy. Like that's we saw Timo Meier do that in San Jose, and we're all about him. And he also had great shot rates too, like Evander Kane did, but he didn't throw quite as many hits as Evander Kane does. There's a lot of reasons to be excited about Evander Kane's fantasy value for next season. Again, it's a big question what happens to him in the offseason, and how much how much of a there's a lot of questions, right, about Evander Kane and all the off-ice situations, which we've talked about on the show before, so I'm not going to list them all, but some are particularly troublesome. But we'll see if Edmonton or any team is ready to commit in any sizable way to him. I mean, clearly he's showing that he can play in the top 6, and I don't think this is all just like because he's playing with McDavid. I think he's like a legitimately good hockey player whose ceiling is high. Like it's a 70-point player who takes a ton of shots and gets a ton of hits, and there's huge value to be found there, but there's so much unknown until he lands with that new team. Like the best thing for his fantasy value would be if he does re-sign with Edmonton, right? Because we talk about making sure to penalize a player a little bit on your draft board if they are moving to a new place, especially if you're Evander Kane and carrying all the baggage he's bringing with him. But because you're not sure how it's going to work out. But if we've seen Kane play with McDavid and he stays in Edmonton, well, then we could probably have a pretty realistic view of how to assess his value going into next year's draft, which would be huge.
Yeah. It'll be interesting. Like, he's a UFA. There's a lot of big names out there, right? Like Johnny Gaudreau is probably the top name UFA that's going to be signed in the offseason, and he'll probably get more than Evander Kane, even just because of the off-ice stuff. Maybe people will be reticent to give Kane this like big, huge contract. But so far, Brian, I hate to say it, and it's just 3 games in, it's nothing, right? But Dallas is beating Calgary 2-1, 2 games to 1.
I have Toffoli and Rasmus Anderson in the KKPP, and it's
not going well. Not going well.
0 points from both of them.
And then Gaudreau, he's not at 0, but he only has 2 assists in 3 games. We brought up in the playoff preview that we did that Gaudreau sort of like has never really had a huge playoffs. And, he's playing for big money, like he's playing for his next contract right now. And I don't know, like at this point, if NHL GMs are watching the playoffs, I wonder if they're thinking like, why spend the big money on Gaudreau? We should go after Evander Kane, who's also a left wing. But anyways, I don't know. I'm just throwing that out there. It's a completely different situation, but I'm definitely happy that I didn't draft Gaudreau in the playoff pool. The Flames we'll see. It's only 3 games in, and like they could score like 5 goals in the next game. But Dallas, I saw something on Twitter, probably someone really great that I should be crediting, tweeted this, but like apparently Calgary hasn't scored a goal while Miro Heiskanen has been on the ice so far. So clearly, Heiskanen's doing really well, shutting down these Flames.
Yeah. Heiskanen, this is a chance to celebrate him, right? When we don't have to be worried about his fantasy value. He looks great. And the Stars have looked great. Like, you mentioned Gani. You mentioned Johnny Gaudreau has only 2 points. He still leads Calgary in points scored because Calgary has scored just 3 goals all series so far, which is pretty amazing considering they had a plus 85 goal differential and ranked 6th in the NHL in goals for through 82 games of play. And Dallas seems to have their number early on. So we'll see how this continues. Meanwhile, Dallas, like I was watching the game and Joe Pavelski, showing up last night. It was Saturday night. It's like, wow, like how does he keep doing this? Although Dallas, also hasn't scored a ton of goals either. This has been a pretty low scoring series through 3 games. There's only been, I think 9 goals total. So if you picked anybody from this series, even if it goes the distance, you're hoping that some more goal scoring shows up because you're not getting a whole lot of points. You've got Yanni Hakanpää tied for second with Heiskanen with 2 points in 3 games behind Pavelski's 3 goals for Dallas Stars production. Probably, it's not like we count on really anybody for production except Roope Hintz, who has 1 goal, and Jason Robertson, who has 1 assist. But again, like Calgary, they're just playing very stingy. And I have to say, watching these games has not been like the most entertaining series, but it's defensive hockey is alive and well. It's not a terrible thing.
All right, so Brian, let's do the final thing we had planned for this bonus episode, which was you've listened to the first 2 beat writer interviews we did with Murat Atesh and Brian Hedger about the Columbus Blue Jackets and the Winnipeg Jets. I guess I just flipped the order there, but people know what I'm talking about here. So why don't you just give us some of your thoughts? Like the whole point of these interviews is to get fantasy takeaways for next. Well, first of all, to be entertained, right? But also to like learn some things and get some ideas of how we want to adjust our expectations for next year. Any interesting takeaways you have from these 2 interviews you listened to?
Well, I liked that, I guess I'll start with Columbus because that's the first one I heard. And, I heard Brian Hedger talking about Zach Werenski and asking the question or sort of putting it out there. Is this guy elite? And we've talked about the ways in which Zach Werenski might be amongst the best in the NHL or emerged this year. And one of those was as a shot taking, potentially goal scoring defenseman. Werenski averaged over 3 shots per game. And it wasn't a fluke, right? Like he was just given the green light on the power play, especially to just go nuts. And he showed this power play upside this year. That was new to us. Like we knew that Zach Werenski could produce on the power play, but I don't think we'd ever seen him be as aggressive as he had been until this year. So it was great to have Brian Hedger sort of confirm that, that is Zach Werenski. He's grown into this role. He's the go-to guy now. He's kind of like the elder statesman of the team, even though he's turning 25 in July. He is the guy on the blue line. So I liked that. And then I found the whole, the conversation about centerman was obviously really interesting. It's a conversation we've been trying to discern through the season, but specifically, and Elon, I'm wondering what your takeaway from this was, but, Boone Jenner sounds like, he's locked in the top 6 somewhere. And then Jack Roslovic, because you talked about Roslovic first, and mentioned how, like I heard Brian say, well, maybe he could be the first line center going forward, but like not in the long term, just in the short term until Columbus develops or drafts somebody to really take that role. But then later on in the interview, you're talking about Cole Sillinger, and I was hearing his name being thrown around as a top line center too. And I was wondering if you came away with any more clarity among like about who has the upper hand. Like I think Jenner, Line, Voracek seem to be working out pretty well, and Brian seemed to be saying the same thing. But between Roslovic and Sillinger, I'm still not sure who the other top six centerman is.
Well, apparently he was saying how Sillinger, right, is going to like have an off season where he's going to try to put on some more weight and like, you know, try to develop into stronger players. So maybe that will help answer. Like we'll kind of have to see who Cole Sillinger is when he comes into camp next season. But yeah, I think the takeaway I had is like they're all three of them are solid, but none of them are like a legit top line center if you want to be like a great team, right? So it's kind of like what we've talked about with Detroit over the years. But even like Larkin is like a bigger star than any of these guys. So I feel like Boone Jenner like sort of has the job because someone had to do it, and he was saying like all the things that Jenner brings, like great at faceoffs. Apparently the other two aren't that great at faceoffs so far. But yeah, in terms of like, I think long term, I'd expect Cole Sillinger, like he has the bigger pedigree. I'd expect him to at some point overtake Roslovic, but also they could always like play Sillinger on the wing like they did this year. So I think we don't really have clarity on that right now.
Yeah, and the reason I'm looking for it, and I loved what Hedger also had to say. Like, I hope I'm not spoiling for anyone. Like, if you haven't listened to the interview, this is not the way to listen to it. Like, go and get it all firsthand.
Pause the pod now. Go listen to that, and then come back for the.
And
takeaways.
then come back because like you're getting some of our key takeaways. But context
and don't be like, oh, now I don't have to listen to the interview since I could just listen to the takeaway because you're costing us our well-earned downloads, right? Not nice.
That's what's most important. No, what's really important is you get the full context and feel of the conversation. And also that if you liked it, you tweet Brian or Marat or anybody Elon and I think Ben soon will be talking to and let them know how great it was of an interview.
Oh yeah, we'd appreciate that.
Yeah. But
I just like turn into such a suck up in the summers. I'm just like sucking up to these people all the time.
Well, it's because it's a big flip. You never suck up to me at all on the show. You do the opposite.
I can just be like Brian,
lion to lamb.
8:00, be here. The other ones have to be like, oh, I love your work. If you could just come grace me with your presence. All right. So what do you think about from the Winnipeg interview? What takeaways do you have from there? Oh, you have more from Columbus. Okay, please.
Well, no, just hanging on to Columbus. The reason I'm trying to figure out the second line center thing. And I loved how far along Hedger was saying Sillinger was looking and like that he could be like he's showing a lot of poise for early in his career. But he called Oliver Bjorkstrand the odd man out during the interview because he wasn't on this top unit and like didn't have a consistent centerman, which we talked a lot about. He didn't have Boone Jenner, which we talked a lot about. So I was glad to hear that we were sort of on the right track for trying to figure out what's up with Bjorkstrand. And so Hedger was sort of predicting that next year, Bjorkstrand could find himself with Sillinger, which would be interesting because Sillinger's shot is like his big asset. Bjorkstrand's shot is his big asset, but also Sillinger has a pretty responsible game about him too, which would help. Like basically, I just want to know what everything meant for Bjorkstrand. And by the way, Elon, this is just a note for like other, like we had our whole episode where we asked like what we want to ask the beat writers. I really wanted to know about the shot counts, like, and why Bjorkstrand's shot counts like fluctuated so wildly through the season.
Right.
And so, anyway,
we did talk about Bjorkstrand, but I guess we didn't bring up the shots.
I wanted to know that piece specifically.
I'll share my notes next time with you before the interview, so you can make sure I'm covering everything because I didn't memorize. You have the one
question from the episode we did.
I didn't memorize them all. Like
we have show notes from that episode.
That's true.
Yeah.
Well, okay. So we'll get together somehow and figure this out.
So anyway, great job. Merzlikins also, I mean, again, I don't mean to spoil the whole interview, but I loved it. There was some really good stuff on him and also what he was dealing with and what we can expect next year. I remember at the start of the season, Merzlikins was saying how motivated he was to have a great season because of the personal tragedy of his friend dying in the off season, his friend and goaltending partner. And I was like, yeah, I kind of believe it. And then you saw, obviously, like that is Merzlikins is 28. So he's not young. He was 27 when the season started, but that is what someone would say. Like, I'm going to go in and like win it for Matisse and then struggle with the reality of like grief and trauma. So I heard what Hedger said about his last 6 weeks of the season or so, or thereabouts, and how he seemed to be picking up his game. And I went and checked the numbers, and it was true. So it's nice to have finished. And so I was really high on Merzlikins going into this past season, and I'm not going to downgrade at all based on the difficult season he had. I'm all in on Merzlikins again. Like, I thought he was a great pick in fantasy drafts this past year, and it didn't turn out to be the case, but I'm just going to hitch my wagon again.
Yeah, and plus maybe Columbus will just be a better team, with all these. But like, if Cole Sillinger is a better player, and like that obviously helps the team. If Kent Johnson comes in and is able to make a significant impact, so yeah,
top pair Blankenburg.
Yeah. Oh, I loved hearing that. I'm sure. One sec. Sorry. Oh yeah, I'm sure Norm also enjoyed hearing that as a relative of Blankenburg. Okay, so Brian, anything else from Columbus you wanted to touch on, or do you want to switch over to Murat and the Winnipeg Jets?
Yeah, no, let's talk about the Jets interview with Murat, which I don't think we've had a chance to talk about on the show, that like sort of quote unquote bombshell from Mark Scheifele, which wasn't really a bombshell, but everyone really reacted to him saying, I guess, well, I'm going to have to take a look and see if this team fits my desired career trajectory. Like, Scheifele's been doing his thing there a while. And honestly, I wish more NHLers would have spoken up the way, would speak up the way he did. Say like, hey, I'm not getting any younger. I'm 29 years old. I've been doing my job being, the face of the franchise and like the most reliable scorer in the franchise for I don't know, the better part of the last 6-7 years, like since he was 22. And he doesn't want to grow old with an organization that's about to go into a rebuild or is aimless. So, hey, by all means, like I think that stuff should happen more often. So way to speak your mind, Mark Scheifele. And there could be more context there, but we'll see what this actually means for the Jets offseason. I would hope that the knee jerk isn't that they make like this half-hearted attempt to load up when they might want to start heading into a rebuild just to keep Scheifele happy. It's a tricky situation, and one we'll keep an eye on to know how it affects the whole picture in the offseason.
Yeah, though, to be fair, like, I still think Winnipeg, like, my takeaway from the interview was like there were a lot of players who kind of had down years that maybe they can turn things around a little bit. And like, I don't know if like this was a season of like indicating that the Jets need to go to a rebuild. So hopefully, like, for the Jets' sake, if you're a Jets fan, hopefully Scheifele will give them one more year to see if they can get back to being the playoff team that they were for so many years beforehand. But obviously, if the Jets could do something in the offseason to make him happy. But I don't know, like, why go into a rebuild? Just said you have like Ehlers, you have Kyle Connor, like you have like young superstar, but you have Scheifele if he stays. Like, this is like, they've got a great core. They've got Hellebuck, one of the top goalies, like theoretically, or like as he's shown at times. So, like, I just feel like this is a team that could be good. And I feel like it would be a bit premature for Scheifele. Like, good on him if he could go to like whatever, Colorado, Florida. Like if he can work himself into a trade to go to like a clear contender, then sure. But like, also, by the way, I just said Florida. We didn't mention how Washington's beating Florida 2-1 right now. Washington really, made them eat dirt in the last game. But anyway,
and in the first game too, very decisive victories.
So, and still Bobrovsky is going to be the goalie. I feel like Spencer Knight should get a shot, but that's a whole other conversation that we should have had earlier, but we didn't, and now we got to keep moving forward. But yeah, my takeaway from the interview was like, I'm interested to see what the Jets can do next year. I feel like they can still be good. It would be nice if they could have one of these like prospects that they've been excited about actually come through. Like, it seems like all of their prospects have been duds lately. So we'll see if like that can change, but even just their course seems like pretty good. But yeah, was there any other player that stood out from you from the conversation that you're interested in what we said about them?
Well, the one guy we always wanted to know about was Neil Pionk through the season. And I was interested to hear, and also Morrissey is really connected, and Murat, whose article on Josh Morrissey and his dad and the relationship there, I saw when it came out, and like clearly, as Murat attested to, there was impact on Josh Morrissey, and he wasn't able, from our perspective, Josh Morrissey was a guy with upside and potential who just couldn't hit the next gear, like who couldn't follow that expected trajectory, when in reality, he was struggling with a lot of stuff personally, and it didn't have much to do with his physical ability or true upside. It was just needing to be patient as he worked through some stuff. And then when he finally figured it out, that of course impacts Neil Pionk, who it's official. You know, I heard it from Murat, and I needed to hear that Pionk's status as the power play one quarterback is like officially in doubt. You know, the question
long
was,
gone.
Okay, I know. I was so as a Pionk haver in a redraft, so it doesn't even matter. But you know, I was always sort of like, okay, maybe Morrissey will fall off and Pionk will step back up. But Morant was like, no, Morrissey's not going to fall off, and Pionk, you know, is going to recover to some extent, but he might not regain that top power play role, especially if Morrissey continues to grab it. Also, the other, I feel like the biggest takeaways for me were about that top power play and about the whole Ehlers business. And, you know, for the fourth consecutive season, we're like, well, Ehlers is actually a really great player. He might even be the best player on the team. He just doesn't get the deployment. But just towards, I think, the end of the interview, when you were talking about Blake Wheeler and Murat sort of like, it might have been like just kind of a tossed off comment, but it caught my ear, which was that Wheeler can only keep being like really relevant or productive if he does hold on to that top power play spot, which is not a guarantee. And to me, that's the cue for Ehlers to finally step up onto that top unit. So those are the two. Like I would love to see these two long-awaited changes to happen on the top unit. You know, I feel it's unfortunate for Pionk, who is going to have a decent floor, but the ceiling goes down for sure. But I just want to know, like, is it going to be Morrissey and Ehlers on the top unit replacing Pionk and Wheeler? That was one of my key takeaways.
Yeah, well, there was that really big bombshell also that apparently Murat doesn't believe that Ehlers doesn't want to be on the top power play. And we were like talking about how we were not sure where even that came from. We had a patron, Matt, who's here in the chat, like brought up how like it was apparently a quote from Coach Paul Maurice, who's like no longer the coach, saying that Ehlers liked being on the second power play. So we've tweeted that to Murat, so we'll see what he responds to that. But yeah, like it does seem like Ehlers would do better there, but I guess we need to find out if he wants to be there. Well, it shouldn't matter anyways. We have a new coach, like just put him there. But yeah, he's gonna have to bump someone, and it doesn't sound like he's gonna be bumping Scheifele, Connor. Well, not Scheifele gets traded, but like Scheifele, Connor, PLD, and Morrissey are there, and then I guess Wheeler seems to be entrenched there. So it's like it's not as if there's an easy spot for Ehlers to take, but it would be interesting to see him get a shot there. But that would potentially kill Wheeler's fantasy value. But Wheeler had a really good end of the year. Like it was over a point per game after that slow start. So he's the kind of guy who Murat also said like you don't want to like totally write him off, even though his like skill has gone down a little bit, and like he's good on the power play, right? It's not as if it's just like he's lucky to be there. Like obviously he's producing there for a reason, right? So or at least a little bit of column A and a little bit of column B.
Yeah, I felt a little validated when you mentioned, you mentioned to Murat that I had sort of projected Wheeler for a downswing, and Murat was like, yeah, and he probably did a little better than he should have, and he might not hold on to that top power play spot. So I feel comfortable saying I think Wheeler still, he did better than I thought he might, but I think he also overproduced to some extent. Even if you regress all the extra points that Wheeler might have gotten that I wouldn't have expected, I think he probably still would have done better than I would have said he was going to do going into the season. But I think we're still at least on the right track here in thinking not to expect the world of Blake Wheeler anymore.
Right. And of course, my final big takeaway is I hope that Murat is like not wrong, but I hope that he's not high enough on Dmitry Reshevsky, because he's someone I have in my dynasty league, and I hope that he like sees what he does and then is like uber impressed. So obviously we'll find out soon.
I mean, what do you think of the like Eric Comrie, whether he's back or not, because of the minutes played situation might have been mismanaged by the Jets front office to keep him around. But let's say that Eric Comrie sticks around. Do you think, because Murat was talking so positively about him, do you think that impacts Hellebuck's workload at all next year?
It should. I think it should. Like Hellebuck has been worse and worse every year since he won the Vezina. He's probably at least slightly affected by the fact that he plays so much. If Comrie's good and they could get him for cheap, why not like actually make use of him? And not like, I'm not saying make it 50-50 or not even make it like 60-40, but at least like 70-30. I don't think it's like too much to ask. Like, why does Hellebuck need to play like 65 to 70 games a season? It doesn't seem necessary, especially since he's been struggling. Yeah.
Agree. So you would think, but I mean,
we'll see what happens.
Yeah,
I'm sure
exactly.
Comrie is going to be in his contract because Comrie's going to get some suitors, right? He had a strongish season. So I feel like if the Jets want him to come back, I feel like it's reasonable for him to be like, well, can you give me some assurances that I'll frickin' play once in a while? Like that would make me more interested because maybe I'll sign a 1-year contract so I can try to prove that this past season wasn't a fluke, but I need to actually get a chance to show what I can do. Otherwise, like I'm just going to end up having to take another 1-year contract. Anyway, yeah, that was a fun convo for sure. So hopefully everyone enjoyed this fun convo. Brian, a little bonus keeping Karlsson content. We're going to be back with more interviews coming up next week. We've already got one booked. Ben's going to be talking about the Islanders with Arthur Staple. Let me just confirm that.
Isn't it? He's on the Rangers now.
Oh yeah, sorry. Ben's going to be talking about the Islanders with Kevin Kurz. That's scheduled on the book, so hopefully that will go down smoothly, and you'll be getting that pretty soon. And then we've got some others we're still working on scheduling because that's what we do here in the off season is we like just email back and forth with people and try to bring you these interviews. So make sure you're subscribed to Keeping Karlsson. Make sure you become a patron if you want to pre-register for the couple, and if you are a patron, go and get your name on the list. Good luck to everyone in the second half, I guess, of the first round of the Keeping Karlsson playoff pool. The top 5 in each division are going to make it to round 2. We'll be reaching out to you probably later next week to start, getting the plans out there for the second round drafts. But with that, Brian, okay, I'm done. Let's cue the outro music. Do we have credits? Do you do credits for a bonus episode? Give us like an abridged bonus episode version of the credits, and then we'll sign off here.
I mean, I definitely used NHL.com and Hockey Reference and Natural Stat Trick and Evolving Hockey over the course of recording this show live with you.
Okay, well then this was a blast, and thanks to them. Thanks, of course, to our patrons and the super supporters. Brian, why don't you just name the super supporters, and then we'll be on our way.
Okay, hang on. I got to pull this off. Did you even you didn't? I don't think we did the presented by Dabra hockey bit at the start. That's okay. I'll say it now.
Yeah.
You should look at it's episode 404, our beat writer questions.
Okay.
Just take a peek there before. There's some good stuff. I worked hard on some of those questions.
It was a great episode.
Okay. Thanks for okay. The super supporters helped bring this episode of Keeping Karlsson to you all. So please join me in thanking Tyler, Flash, Andrea, Tom, Derek, David, Rob, and of course, Patty, who's a great Twitter follow, by the way. I've been enjoying following Patty through the playoffs at MarineMom34, I think is her tag. Also thanks to Dabra Hockey for presenting us. You can still have all our game day tweets rolling. GameDayTweets.com for all the Twitter handles there. Logo or art by BrandonWeeb.com. Outro music by Pat Roach. Thanks so much for listening. And Elon, thanks so much for doing these 32 beats. I can't wait for the next one. Yeah, well, soon you'll be thanking Ben as well because he's going to be jumping behind the mic. But Brian, until we chat again, what should we ask our dear listeners to do? I hate saying okay. Until we chat again, what should we be asking our listeners to do as they're enjoying the rest of the first round of the playoffs? Well, we should be and are asking our listeners to do what you can to make sure that fantasy hockey is for everyone. All right. Fun show. Thanks for the live chat people for joining. Always nice. John Kraken-wise here. Always making me laugh. I know John was here for the big cupful announcement, and I know he's also like shaking his head, A, at what the announcement was, and B, in the like poorly messaged way it was delivered, and how the website is not yet updated, and we don't have a way for like other people. Mother's Day today, everybody. So we had to go to picnics and such. So we didn't have time to do all that, but we'll get there. All right. I actually need to, all of us have to go on Mother's Day picnics. Did you go on a picnic today? I had lunch outdoors with my wife. Would you have done that any Sunday, or did you like? She's someone who has the capability of being a mother, right? Biologically. That's true. I don't know, but yeah. Okay. See, I gotta go. See everyone. Bye, Brian. Goodbye.